It's time for the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast, a podcast so good it doesn't need a name. So without any further ado, here's your host, JD. Take it away, Johnny.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 30, the big 3-0 of the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast, recorded on January 18th, 2014. I'm your host, JD, aka Gaddick Teague, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about the Rakghoul event. That's right, the Rakghoul event came back this weekend. It's actually wrote this before I thought that the Rakghoul event when it was going to be coming back this week, and it actually just got teased at and it's not coming this week. So, we'll talk about the Rakghoul event and what I think will be coming up next week, or maybe they're just teasing us and they're doing something completely different. Either way, I'll talk about the Rakghoul event, what I hope to see, what I don't hope to see. And we will discuss the public test server, how I think it could be improved for both the players and for BioWare. All this and an idea fresh off my wall of crazy, so let's force leap right in.
Red 2, I've got a topic coming in hot, requesting clearance to engage.
Lock S-foils in attack positions. You are cleared to discuss.
This week, Courtney Woods took to the official forums and the SWTOR official Twitter, teasing what would seem to be the Rakghoul event that we all know is coming, we think, but we know. But we think that is coming. We thought last week, but maybe next week. We know there's an event coming in January. That is what we know, confirmed from BioWare through their the SWTOR Insider video for January. We know there's a new event coming in January. From all the mining we've seen, it's most likely going to be the Rakghoul event. And with all this posting from Courtney, that's pretty much confirmed at this point. So Courtney took to the forums and the Twitters and released some very flavorful posts stating that there are reports of animal attacks on Alderaan. GSI are, strangely involved somehow. There's lots of GSI ships around. There are armed men in Thorn uniforms from the GSI. People are reported missing. So this all leads me to believe, and leads pretty much everyone to believe, that the Rakghoul event will be coming soon. What I like a lot about this is, not necessarily... Alright, let's start with what I don't like about this. I don't like how they are teasing this out for so long. I think it is kind of cool to tease things out, and that's kind of how they've done this in the past. This is kind of what they did with the Shevin event. They released that Shevin trailer a couple days before they actually released the Shevin event. I think they did this for the Geir event also. They kind of teased that out a little bit before finally releasing it. So this has been their strategy thus far for events, except for the event that everyone loved. The event that people are clamoring for, and the reason we're getting another Rakghoul event, was the first Rakghoul event was just dumped on us out of nowhere, and suddenly we had something new and crazy to do. All of a sudden there was a PSA on the fleet talking about how there was a Rakghoul outbreak on Tatooine, and bam, we were in the event. We didn't know anything about it. The data miners were not as prevalent back then, so we didn't really know anything from there. It was just out of the blue, bam, there was an event. And I think that was one of the strongest parts about the first Rakghoul event. And I'm kind of sad that they're not at least trying to do that with this event. And part of me thinks that's because of the data miners, and that we know that a Rakghoul event, well, we know, quote unquote, I mean, the data miners have obviously been wrong before, but for the most part, they do a really good job. I mean, they do a great job, and for the most part, they're usually right with their predictions and figuring out what's going to be in the game next. So that kind of throws a monkey wrench into this, where they can't just stealth drop all this stuff at once when they want to release a new event. I mean, they could hold back all of the assets and then dump them all at once. That is a possibility for a future surprise event. And I hope that they do that for some kind of event, because for something like the Rakghouls, if you just think about it, like the Rakghoul event kind of feels like it should be out of nowhere. All of a sudden there's this event. I know they are making it flavorful with the whole, there are reports of animal attacks on Alderaan and things like that. I wish these were like reports going on in the fleet instead of, Twitter posts or posts to forums. I think that would add a little bit more to this kind of teasing out the event before it happens. If you heard on Fleet, all of a sudden a news bulletin that there are reports of animal attacks on Alderaan, please stay away from Alderaan. things like that. That would be more interesting to me than just tweeting out these things. Well, and they are cool, they are flavorful, and I do like that they're trying to add some flavor to the event outside of the physical, means of what the event will be. But I just wish that they had done it in a different and more cohesive way, or not done it at all. I think that we do need events in the future that do drop out of nowhere, that we don't know are coming, that aren't teased out of nowhere. And I know Bioware wants to use the event as a way to get people subscribed, and a good way to do that is let people know a couple days or weeks ahead of time that they'll be doing an event like this, so that those people do up their subscriptions, re-up their subscriptions, and get ready for the event. But I think the whole act of stealth dropping an event with zero warning, zero lead up, and just, out of nowhere, all of a sudden we're doing something, that has like a viral capability. I know that's like a dirty word these days, but that whole kind of just out of nowhere, there's something new, has a virility to it where it will spread, and the players will do themselves the tweeting out about this event. We'll do the Facebook posts, we'll do the post to the forums, to the subreddit, to the Massively forums or the IGN forums about how all of a sudden there was this cool new event that was in game to play. I think that would be awesome. And they're kind of splitting the baby on this one. Like, we haven't seen this on the PTS. They haven't dropped on the PTS. They have been very coy about when they were actually dropping this and what it was going to actually be. But alright, let's talk about a little bit of the good. I really like that they are tying the Rackles into the GSI and the whole Shadow Shroud. Shadow or Shroud? Or is it bolt? I don't remember. But I do like that they're tying it into something like that, because they are moving into the next chapter of SWTOR and the new story arc that we'll all be playing towards, and the new endgame story arc where this story is going. And I think the GSI are a great place to go for a unified bad guy, because in MMOs, you do want the factions having some kind of interaction and do want them to be fighting against each other, but you need to have a common enemy. Just because of the mechanics of how an MMO works, you need to have a common enemy so that you can have the operations that are the same for both sides. You can have reusable areas that are the same for both sides, which are important things just on the game perspective, where you can reuse assets and reuse the boss fights for both sides. So you do need that common enemy, even though you do want to also encourage PvP and player versus player environment. And I think the GSI are a great common enemy. There was a post on the subreddit about where players would like to see the story go in SWTOR. And I talked about how I thought the GSI would be a great start, like I just said. And I thought it would be cool if they were like the secret corporation that was kind of going stealthily and trying to take over both sides and like embed themselves into both factions, and they were the ones that were really trying to take over. And someone mentioned to me that, yeah, that would be great. I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry that I'm not going to call you out here. But they said it would be great if the GSI just went all Umbrella Corporation on everyone. And I thought that was perfect, and I thought that tied in so well with this Rackle idea. What if the GSI did go all Umbrella Corporation and they were working on these bioweapons, and they were working on all this crazy stealthy infiltration stuff? They have their own Thorn army. They have their own set of war droids. They're really ramping up towards being able to take over both the Empire and the Republic. And that just seems like a great place for the story to go, and I think this could be the start of it. What if this Rackle event, the story of this Rackle event, was about the GSI going nuts, and how they were on the precipice of really being able to take over and really strengthening up themselves, and how that's what players need to be doing next, is taking down the GSI. That would be really cool, and then we could have a GSI operation next. That would be the next operation. We could have a GSI-themed Warzone next. So I think this is a great place to start story-wise, and I'm excited to see where the event goes. I thought one of the great parts about the event was how the story just gradually evolved. Each day you got another piece of the puzzle, each day you got another quest, until eventually you got to the end, and you saw the story arc through. I thought that was a really cool thing. And if they did something like that, where it was, you slowly uncover who is the source of the Rackle outbreak and where the Rackles are coming from on Alderaan, until you finally culminate in realizing that it was the GSI behind it all along, and they were planning on trying to take over Alderaan, or planning on trying to take over X, Y, and Z, that would be a really cool story, and I think they could do something similar to that. But when I do think about the first Rackle event, I'll go back to that again, I think players definitely overrate how good the first Rackle event was, just because of the timing and the structure and how it was something new to the game that we've never seen before. We had never seen an event before. We had never even heard of an event coming out before. And all of a sudden there was this Rakul event. So I think players overestimated how good it was because of the virility that I talked about before. Because in the end, it was really just a couple of quest lines and people blowing up on the fleet. Like, how cool was the snowball event? I think the general consensus was that that was a pretty lazy implementation of Life Day. So I think the exploding player thing is a similar situation. I mean, it's cool and it's funny the first couple times, but really it was more annoying than anything else. And then on top of that, I mean, the quest line really wasn't all that interesting. You went to the ships, you had to scavenge parts, you had to kill a gold elite, then you had to go all the way across Tatooine, you had to talk to another guy, you had to go through the Sand People area with the Sand People that were kind of annoying because there was kind of annoying drop rate on the item that you had to get from them. And then you had to kill the infected banthas, and then you had to go all the way to the scroll or the painting that they had up, and like that's all stuff that we've all done before on pretty much all the planets. The quests, the variety of quests was not great. It was pretty boring. What really held it together was the story and the suddenness of it all. And I think players did like the exploding people thing, but that's a gimmick. That's not going to make an event. If they just put back in the exploding people, that's not going to make players love the event just because, oh, I can explode on people in PvP. Like, that's a gimmick. And you don't want to put a lot of stock in gimmicks because gimmicks get old fast. So I hope that they do something interesting and something cool. I hope it focuses on story, and I hope it does have some innovative gameplay that we haven't necessarily seen before. I'm sick of the recurring daily area events. They're not events, and I said that to Damien, and the face he made was pretty funny when I saw him at the New York City Cantina. But seriously, I'm just really sick of these are quests that you've seen all over, you know, kill 15 of these people, and then come back and do it tomorrow, and then we'll be gone, but we'll be coming back next month, so don't worry about it, you can get your rep then. Like, that's not an event. I really don't think events should recur, and I know that you don't want to burn code and whatnot, but and this is something that I am hopeful for, is that I've heard players talk about certain areas on other planets also changing, having some different areas, like Alderaan, I think, had a crater area added, which will probably be the source of the event, the place that you go on Alderaan for the event. And I've heard that other planets may have also had similar areas added, so maybe there'll be an added part to this event that you go to different planets each time it comes back, and if that's the case, maybe I could forgive it a little bit. But I really just hate these areas and events coming back. They're not events, they're just daily areas. So give us a cool, limited time event where there's some urgency. You have to get it done the first time. If you don't get it done, tough shit. That's okay. Players are allowed to miss things. You can have players miss things if other players feel special for having done them, because that's an important thing. The special snowflake syndrome is a real thing. You even put a title in the game about it. It's important to have certain players feel special about certain things. And I think events are great ways to get the average player, the normal player, the person who's not going to be a world first player, the person who's not going to have the highest rating in PvP. You're going to get those average players feeling special about something, that they participated in something that not everyone got to. So that's why I really think that this event, and I hope this event doesn't come back the same way, if it does come back at all. And I really hope that events going forward, I know you can't burn code, BioWare, but figure out something where you don't bring back the same event twice, because I really think you're doing a disservice to the game by doing so. I'm sorry I got a little ranty there at the end, but I just had to get that off my chest because I really am sick of that. But overall, the Rakul event, we'll see what it is. We really have very little information about what the actual gameplay of the event will be. We know it'll be using different currency, like I've been saying for friggin' years since the event happened. I knew that the DNA wasn't going to be worth anything. So that's why I sold mine as soon as I could. I got a pretty penny on that after the event too. Some players, man, they just don't listen. But anyway, we'll come back and we will be talking about the public test server and how I think it could be improved. There's definitely some problems with the system there, so we'll be talking about that right after the break. Now I want to talk a little bit about the public test server. Public test servers are, just by nature, very interesting and weird beasts. You know, players always want to be trying the latest and greatest stuff, but not necessarily at the expense of being able to play something that actually matters, which is why public test servers in general, I think, in all games, are just difficult to find a balance and a proper place for. There will always be those players that are in the cutting edge guilds going for world firsts, and they'll be testing out the new raid content when it comes out and on the PTS that way. But other things that go on the PTS are always very difficult to place and get into people's heads that you should be trying to test this out. And the patch 2.6 public test server kind of is a microcosm of all of these things put together. Players, in theory, should want to be trying out the new bomber before it's out and figuring out how they want to gear that up and test that out before it goes live into the GSF in the full real game. But it's just not happening. I've been on the public test server several times. Many people have been on the public test server several times. You've seen my videos. And I've been trying to get coverage of the GSF changes, the new deathmatch mode, the new ship class, the bomber, and it's just impossible. I've waited in queue for over 2 hours at one point trying to find a queue. Not a single one pops. And there are many different reasons for this, and there are some things I think that they could do to improve this, because I want to be able to test this stuff, because selfishly I want to get videos out to you guys, because I want you guys to see what's going on the PTS. But B, I want to be able to test this stuff so we can help find bugs and hopefully help BioWare improve the game. I know players have definitely been helping out, getting on the PTS, testing out the changes to the scoundrels, testing out the changes to the sniper, gunslingers, and there's a lot of good stuff that's come out of that. We found out that we think Scrapper is going to be a totally viable spec now. I think that the changes they made there are good, and I think BioWare is seeing that. And I think that all the doom and gloom on the sharpshooter spec for snipers is kind of died down because of the testing that we've seen on the public test server. We've also seen that players are trying out the 4-man content, the new Kuat drive yards. You only need 4 people for that, so it's really easy to get in there and, you know, get 4 people together on your fleet to try out the new Kuat drive yards. And if you haven't, you can check out my videos of those. But in order to test all the stuff for Galactic Starfighter, we need at least 16 people, and optimally we need 24 people onto the public test server. And this is one of the things that people brought up when they first heard that Galactic Starfighter will be 12v12, is the fact that 12v12 is a lot of players for a relatively small MMO. I mean, it's a big MMO for what it is, but when you compare it to a game like WoW, and people want to try and make parallels to WoW all the time, even if they aren't necessarily warranted, but I think this is an apt comparison, because if you try and compare public test server in SWTOR to the public test server in WoW, you're going to be disappointed, because even if the percentages of people doing the public test server are the same, at some point the percentage isn't what matters, it's the actual sheer number of people. And if you end up with less than 16 people on a public test server at one time, the public test server might as well not be up. Like, that's kind of a crappy thing to say, because I know a lot of people want to try out things in the public test server, but I think what they really need to do is to limit it, just like, and this is going to be very similar to my suggestions for the changes to ranked, is I think they need to limit the public test server to specific times and really publicize those times and really get it out to the community that those are the times they should be testing. And maybe they don't need to do that for all the content. Maybe for things like operations or for the new flashpoints, they can leave those up all the time whenever the public test server is up. But for things like player versus player, where it's required to have a certain number of people to go, and you're counting on a large number of people in order for queues to pop and for testing to be happening, you should focus your efforts and focus on specific times to give players just a time frame to be on. And I know community groups like Red from the UtiniCast tried to put together a Galactic Starfighter testing session, but it sounds like even him, a very prominent member of the SWTOR community, had trouble getting together full groups in order to get queues popping. And that's just a shame, and I think BioWare needs to work harder themselves in order to get these queues popping. And they should be the ones organizing these community-driven things. And even they could go out to the fan sites and work together with them to organize these times. If SWTOR went out to the Dolphys of the world, the UTDcasts, the Torocasts of the world, and said, hey, we want to try and get together on the public test server and have like a play with the fan sites night or play with the devs night at this time. I know that worked in the past when they had the arenas with the devs. I saw 100 people on the fleets at those times when they were doing the live streams with the devs. So things like that would really help testing. They can't be getting any positive or real feedback from the public test server when it comes to the Bomber class or the Galactic Starfighter. I don't even know if I really don't even know if Deathmatch has its own map or if it's just a mode for the other maps. I think it's just a mode for the other maps, but I honestly don't know because I can't see it and I've never seen it. It's really annoying to see something like that because I want it to work and I want it to be a good source of testing for BioWare. But if they don't support it right, we're not gonna see anything out of it. Another thing is they need to add back those titles that they had for testing on the public test server. Make them change every time. Put a title in for each time you put up the public test server for a major patch. And by completing certain objectives and achievements for a certain testing session, reward them with a title in-game. That's cool, or a mini-pet or something like that. I think you could do giveaways where if people get on during those times that you set, you can give away Taunfaun codes to random people in Fleet that are queuing for Galactic Starfighter on the PTS. I think that's a cool way of getting players into the public test server. It just needs some form of incentive and some form of herding everyone into a specific time so we can get good testing going. Because I really want to test this stuff out and I really want to show it to you. And I know you might say that people like me doing videos or people like Dolphy doing coverage of the PTS might disincentivize people from going onto the PTS, but there is nothing like testing for yourself. I may be able to show you what's going on with the new Kuat drive yards or what's going on with the Bomber class, but until you've played it yourself, you don't get the full breadth and understanding of it. So even if you do watch my videos, I highly encourage you to get on the PTS, download it, and try it out for yourself, because you never know what you'll be able to find, what tricks you'll be able to find, or what bugs you'll be able to find that helps the game improve, and improves your experience when it actually goes live into the live game. So that's really it on that subject. I just wanted to have a brief discussion about the PTS, because I know right now it's in a state of just not being great, and it needs to be improved. And I hope BioWare goes some distance to help improve the public test server. With that, it's time for the Wall of Crazy.
What? That's impossible even for a computer.
It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats in my T16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters.
And this week's Wall of Crazy topic isn't necessarily a Wall of Crazy topic, but I asked the Twitterverse what they'd like to see for the future story content of SWTOR. I kind of talked about this in the first segment, where I talked about the GSI planning a corporate takeover of the galaxy. But now I'm going to talk about Madmar at SWTORFamily on Twitter's ideas for the future of SWTOR story. He says, with the Dreadmaster gone, it's time for Darth Malgus to return and the war between the Imps and Republic to be more explosive than ever. And I've thought this since the beginning of the game when you knock him down a pit. And we've heard many times from BioWare that he's dead and gone, and they even changed the fight so you don't really knock him down a mineshaft. But I think this is an awesome idea. I think Darth Malgus was one of the best characters that SWTOR has ever had, and the fact that they killed him off in a 4-man flashpoint is a little underwhelming, and I think that he definitely deserves a return. And I think he would make for a great operations boss and a great antagonist for the whole game. He's a very charismatic character. He has some great and cool story related to him, and I think that he should definitely be brought back to the game. So thank you at SWTORFamily for your Wall of Crazy suggestion. And with that, I think I can wrap up the show. Let me announce the Taunfaun code winner from last week, and that was Jason Etheridge at Jason Etheridge of Utinicast. You may know him as Tio. So congratulations to him, and keep up the good work in the Utinicast. For next week's Taunfaun code giveaway, let's see, what should I do for next week's Taunfaun code giveaway? Alright, all you have to do is to tweet at GTEAG on Twitter with the hashtag Taunfaun, and tell me who is your favorite bad guy from all of SWTOR. It could be anyone, it could be Darth Malgus, it could be the Dreadmasters, it could be whoever you want. Just tell me at GTEAG, hashtag Taunfaun, Who is your favorite bad guy from all of SWTOR? As always, if you'd like to contact me, you can send your questions, comments, and concerns to gadekteague.crr@gmail.com, or you can tweet them to @gteague on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes to get your weekly podcast updates. If you're new to the game or thinking of resubscribing, I provided my refer friend link in the show notes, so if you'd like a little added incentive to come back, feel free to use it. You can also check out my website, Gadek Gaming, where I post videos from SWTOR and all sorts of other games. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast. This is JD, signing off.